What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Football Diary. And first off, I want to say that this is going to be kind of a big announcement type. We're actually streaming this right now, but if you're watching this in post or you're listening to this on podcast platform, which right there, that's part of the update, is we're also switching back to being more of a podcast because that's what we started out doing. If you guys don't know, if you've been new to the YouTube channel or you really aren't familiar with Matt and I's content, Matt doing Friar Talk and Nuggets of Gold, myself doing TTB Ravens Media. What we've been doing basically is we've been doing our YouTube content over there, but we started out, we were a podcast. We just talked about football. It typically came out with, honestly, I believe came out with content almost daily. I know we came out with content at least twice, 3 times a week, and we had a ton of fun doing it. So what we're transitioning back to is we are going to live stream every Tuesday and Thursday, or at least try to live stream every Tuesday and Thursday at approximately 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time for typically about an hour. And what we're going to be doing with that is it's going to be different than, a typical live show that Matt and I are used to. So if you're coming over from either TTB Ravens Media or Friar Talk, where we both live stream fairly consistently over there, how we typically do those is it's more of a live stream and we get a lot of comments and questions in the comment section and the live viewers. And that is typical, and we answer those. And that's pretty much how we do it for typically about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on how things are going. That's not how we're going to be doing this show. How we're going to be doing it is it's going to be Matt and I talking for a majority of the point. Now, if we see something in the comments that catches our eye and we want to talk about, we will most definitely bring it up. And if there's points that are brought up in the comment section, we will talk about them. However, we're going to come in and this is going to be I don't want to say casual football conversation because we do get pretty analytical when we talk about football, but it's going to be much more casual and much less scripted than our typical videos are on any of our channels because we're coming into this. We'll typically have a couple of things we generally want to talk about, but this gives us the opportunity to talk about very, very particular things for short amounts of time because in recent, making the videos and everything like that, if we want a topic, it's typically got to be a 10-minute discussion for it to actually be a topic for us to put on YouTube. Whereas we can talk about things that I know we'll talk about today, that we may talk about it for 2-3 minutes. And it may be very quick, but we wanted to get quick thoughts out on them. And what we'll do with that is we will analyze all of those and we'll post all of the individual segments after the fact. So typically they'll get posted. They'll get posted pretty much every day. And some of them it may be a 10-minute discussion that gets posted. It may be a 2-minute discussion that gets posted, just us quickly saying our thoughts and things like that. So that's kind of like the big update that I wanted to give to all of you. And also it will be on podcast platforms, which we had set up. We'll have to shift them back and change the logo for them. But that's basically what it's going to be. So we'll have to set those up and we'll get it all posted and we'll share out the links, not only on the Football Diary Twitter account, which I know is the biggest Twitter account out of both of us, but and then we'll also post it from our main channel's content and things like that if you guys are interested in listening to the podcast. So that's kind of the goal of this show. Obviously, if you're watching it on YouTube, it's just going to be our faces talking and things like that, which that's what we do most of our content with anyways. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get to talk about things that we don't really get to talk about. If this is your first time ever checking out, I'm not a Niners fan. I'm a Ravens fan. Matt is the Niners fan. And we're just going to have some good conversations, chill out, talk about some things. But did I miss anything, Matt? Is that all set or?
No, I think that makes sense. I think for like what we're doing, it's just we're going to live stream for an hour and then we're going to cut up the clips afterwards. But it's pretty simple. There's a lot of shows that do it like the same way that we are. But I'm ready to talk now about some football.
All right. What do you want to talk about? I think the biggest news, there's a couple of really big news, but I think that Derrick Henry's injury is maybe the biggest news that we've seen. I know we'll definitely talk Von Miller. We'll talk other stuff, but Derrick Henry injury, what are your thoughts on that? The Jones fracture, I've heard 6 to 10 weeks.
So it's kind of like the most like Derrick Henry injury ever where it's like, oh yeah, he broke his foot. He still had 28 carries. I want to say, did he get the injury like 6 carries into the game?
Yes.
I think it was 6.
It was either 6 carries into the game or he took 6 more carries after the injury.
Oh no, it was early. It was early that it happened. It was in like the first or second quarter. So it must have been 6 into the game. He plays this whole game with a broken foot. And then they're like, hey, Derrick, you're out for the season. You broke your foot. And it's like, wait, not so fast. 6 to 10 weeks. And 6 weeks is mid-December. And we know what Derrick Henry likes to do in mid-December. So just Derrick Henry perspective first, it kind of lets it show like, oh, the table's going to be set for Derrick Henry to come out here and just absolutely dominate, which he has done at the end of the season, which it would just be like the most like King Henry thing ever. But if he doesn't come back, and when he's not there, the Titans, it's maybe the biggest offensive loss you could have outside of quarterback. And I would even argue that maybe outside of a few quarterbacks like Rodgers, Mahomes, guys like that, it's going to have a huge impact on the offense. Like their offenses, it might be okay because they have other pieces, but it's going to completely change the way that they operate. So I think you're right about it being the most significant thing. The Von Miller trade's definitely really like a big deal, but I don't know. I think the Derrick Henry injury has a larger impact than pretty much anything right now because it puts the Titans. The Colts could win that division. They could realistically win that division because the Titans are not. I think they're going to struggle a lot.
Yeah, Derrick Henry. I mean, you brought it up. If taking him away outside of maybe a couple quarterbacks, I mean, you talked about the impact on the offense. Yeah, they still have A.J. Brown. They still have Julio Jones. They have Tannehill. The impact on the defense. They're not going to be able to pound the rock with Derrick Henry. The defense is no longer, and the defense isn't that good anyways, but at least they always get to know they've got a lot of time to rest in between the possessions. Now it's going to be much more difficult for them in that sense. And, you talk about the Colts potentially winning the division. The Colts are sitting at like 3 wins right now. The Titans, the benefit for them, very, very easy schedule to finish out the year. Even if they didn't get Derrick Henry back until the playoffs, I'm going to go over their schedule really quickly. This week, not easy. They play the Rams, maybe the best team in the NFL. But then they get Saints, which just lost Jameis. A lot of question marks there. They could be good. But then they have the Texans, terrible. Patriots, they've been pretty bad. The Jaguars, terrible. The Steelers, they've been on the rise. They're not that bad. They're actually a solid team. They play the Niners, who iffy. Sometimes they're solid. Sometimes they're pretty bad. It really depends. Then they play the Dolphins, who have been bad. And then the Texans again, who have been bad. So, like, overall, like, does it even really hurt the Titans that much? Like, obviously, if Derrick Henry doesn't come back and dominate or anything like that. But, like, with the players they have, I feel like they still should be able to win the Titan number, which is 9-10 wins, and win that division once again.
Well,
like,
have they played the Colts yet?
Yeah, I believe they've already played the Colts. I believe they've played the Colts twice already this season. Yeah, they beat them in week 3 and they beat them last week. So they're done with
that's a big deal for them winning the division then. And yeah. I see lunch break here. He says, they have a 3-game lead with 2 wins over the Colts. Like, so, he says it there. But like that makes it a lot harder. So they have to win the game. But the thing is, they only have to be 1 game over the Titans. So if the Titans hit a skid, now it's good that they do have some not great games. I feel like the Texans ones, yes. The Jags are in their division. I don't really know what the Colts schedule is. The Colts should be a lot better, though. They should definitely be a lot better because they were so banged up. But T.Y.'s still hurt. I don't know. They're still kind of hurt. I don't know. I don't have a ton of faith in the Colts, but like, I don't know. It's just tough. I think the Titans will probably barely win the division, but there's a chance that Henry might have to come back and have 2 games at the end of the year where they have to win one of them or both of them to make it. And I think that could be the difference. That's why I think it's just like it has the feeling of like a Derrick Henry, like, I don't know, like epic story,
The Colts still play the Bills, Buccaneers, and Cardinals.
Yeah, it makes it a lot harder for them too.
Being very difficult. Very difficult. I had to look it up to know. Very tough schedule. I mean, the Colts are going to have to not win out, but they're going to have to win every game outside of those games, and they still have the Raiders in there, the Patriots. That's about it. But like overall, I feel like this Derrick Henry injury, it sucks. I hate seeing a guy like Derrick Henry get injured just because he's so much fun to watch, and I do love watching the Titans play, which is ridiculous because they're like so atrocious outside of Derrick Henry, it seems like. But their
defense is going to get cooked, dude. It's Sunday Night Football against the Rams, and they can't flex that game because you have to be 10 days before, that's going to be a horrible football game to watch.
Is that the worst rule in the NFL? Does that lose the NFL the most money? The flexing
I don't know
rule.
why.
Like they had games. It was like Ravens Chargers, and they couldn't flex it. They were like, "Sorry, we can't flex this game," even though it's the only game of the week where two teams with a winning record, I think, were playing.
It was a good decision by them to not flex that one.
It totally worked out in the favor. But like overall, I feel like they lose so much money on just like, oh, here's another Sunday night football game. It's gonna be terrible, like all the time.
So is that that's next week's. Oh man, it's gonna look bad unless you have like Julio Jones and AJ Brown just literally carrying the team because their defense is gonna. That is a horrible matchup for the Titans defense. Their corners are not good. They're banged up. I think Farley's out for the year, and he was already struggling. But like,
I mean,
they
the
don't
only
have
guy
talent.
they have is Kevin Byard. I mean, that's the only guy in my opinion. I mean, they have Bud Dupree, but he's yet to show as an individual player.
Well, they have a decent front seven, but their secondary is
it's
bad, like really, really bad.
You can only get away with a decent front seven if you have a decent secondary, and they don't.
Yeah.
So it's not going to work out for them at all.
So what's your final verdict on the Titans? What does it do? Does it all just come back down to does Henry come back in for the playoffs?
If Henry comes back, I think they're completely fine. Honestly, they could be better. You know, as a former professional athlete of myself who's experienced a Jones fracture, you know, I came back to I think it was middle school basketball team mid-season and was able to perform. In my first game back, I scored the most points I think I ever scored in a game. It was my first game back.
It was
so
two,
if Derrick Henry is anything like me, no, it's a little bit more than two. But if he's anything like me, an expert athlete, Derrick Henry will be completely okay, in my opinion. But like a lot of guys have had the Jones fracture. It's not an ACL, it's not an Achilles or anything like that where it's going to be crazy. It's like repairing the connecting bone, I think, between the foot and the toe. It's not wildly crazy. But let's talk about Von Miller. Because I know we both talk to a lot of Broncos fans and we know a lot of Broncos fans. Von Miller leave? Are you surprised at all? Because I felt like he was going to be traded at some point or cut, whether it was in this offseason or during the season. Yeah.
No, he's a free agent at the end of the year.
Yes.
So it makes perfect sense for the Broncos, but I mean, you saw his reaction. I thought he was going to be a Bronco for life guy. Yes, in terms of like you can trade him away and get value and stuff for him, like it makes sense. But I feel like he's such a big deal to that franchise. I don't know. To me, like the other thing is they had just had a game where they won it with like a huge defensive stand. Because do you remember what happened last week, right? Did you watch into that game?
Yes.
The horrible offensive play. And then, of course, Melvin Gordon no offense to Melvin Gordon, but being Melvin Gordon out there. And then the defense, including Von Miller, has the big stand. It just hurts. Or did they not play? No, I'm sorry. Von Miller didn't play. He played against the Browns. That was the last game he played.
Yeah.
So he hasn't been healthy. He makes a lot of money. However, I don't know if you saw this, but the Rams are not paying him like anything.
Yeah.
So basically, he's going to be making, I think it's $9 million. He makes like 9.25 or 9.5, something like that.
And I think the Broncos pay like 8.
No, they pay like 9. I think it's like almost
yeah.
But they got a second and a third. The Rams, they must not like this upcoming draft class because they have like no picks at all. I don't know how many they have, but I saw like the list of picks that were traded. Obviously, they already traded their first rounder, but they traded like 2, 3, 4, and like 2 6s or something like that. Like they've traded almost every single pick. So they have like no draft capital. They're going all in. They are legitimately going all in. For the Rams, it's an amazing move. They're nasty, dude. They're really, really nasty. It's going to be like Jalen Ramsey is definitely going to have some big time interceptions in the playoffs to win out games. As he's already had this season. Their speed, their defensive line is going to be really, really good.
Yeah, the Rams, they're going to be a ton of fun to watch. I mean, they're already a ton of fun to watch. That's what's crazy about them, is it's not like it was like, oh, they're really struggling defense. The defense hadn't performed to expectations, but they still have Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. They're making plays out there. One of the big things, though, like you talked about Von Miller, you thought he'd be a Bronco for life. This is a different situation than we see a lot of times, where, especially in the NBA, I'll compare it to there, where guys like Russell Westbrook, James Harden, where they leave their team because the team realizes, hey, this guy, yes, you're a legend to our team, but unfortunately, we can't get you there. We can't get you to that championship. Do you want to stay? Do you want to move on? And sometimes the guy will say, like a guy like Damian Lillard will be like, you know what? I'm going to stay in Portland. Harden, Westbrook or whatever, they're like, you know what? I'm going to go try and win it somewhere else. Von Miller's won. He's won with the Denver Broncos. It's not like he's a guy that's never won a ring, never had success. Like, this guy's already an all-time great. He's already going to be a Hall of Famer. And he meant so much to that city. I mean, he's been the pinnacle since John Elway, which is saying a lot because a guy named Peyton Manning was there for a while. Like, so Von Miller leaving, I think, just was a big surprise to a lot of Bronco fans, just because in all of the quarterback turmoil and turnover that they have had, from, oh my gosh, Trevor Siemian to Paxton Lynch to Brock Osweiler to Drew Lock to now Teddy Bridgewater to Tim Tebow. A lot of really poor quarterback play in there, but they always could look at one thing, and that was that Von Miller was going to be getting sacks for you.
I love that you bring that up, because I was just looking right now. So this is Von's 11th season.
Yeah.
Not counting this year. So in his first 10, he only has 2 years where he doesn't have double-digit sacks.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, he's probably a first ballot Hall of Famer. And if not first, he's definitely second or third. Like, he's a Hall of Fame lock.
Yeah, 100%. And so, like, them losing them, I think it was smart. I think it was very smart of them. But even when, like, they did the right thing, it still hurts to do the right thing sometimes. Like, that's a really tough thing to do, is trading a guy like that. As an OKC fan who lost Russell Westbrook, I know what it feels like to lose somebody that meant so much to your franchise. But, now Broncos fans, I think, get to watch the Rams and at least have a team to root for, because without
Is that what
Von
Broncos
Miller,
fans are going to do, you think?
I mean, yeah.
Probably, huh?
I mean, I don't think that they're going to go out there and be like, I'm a Rams fan now.
No. But like, come playoff time.
Yeah, they're going to be rooting for the Rams.
I mean, we definitely like the Broncos. They're 4-3 right now, but their offense is not good. Like, they had a playoff caliber defense. I think that's why you're going to see a lot of, like, the players and, like, just everyone kind of upset about it. I do think you're right, though. Like, in terms of, like, team building stuff, it does make sense. Here would be the one thing, though. What if they were like, well, we're going to let Vaughn walk anyways, and then they re-sign Courtland Sutton, like, to some huge deal? I think you're going to see a lot of people really confused. And I like Courtland Sutton, but it'd be like, dude, we just drafted Judy. We have Tim Patrick. We have KJ Hamler, and you let Vaughn walk because you wanted to pay this guy? Like, it's going to feel like... So I think a lot of it does depend on their offseason.
Let's talk about the offseason. I'm actually kind of interested in this. If you're, unfortunately, John Elway, which is crazy to say, NFL legend, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, one of the worst general managers in all of football, what are you doing? Like, how do you rebuild this Broncos team? Because obviously they lost him, and you talked about, the potential of extending Sutton. Like, how are you looking at the Broncos and building for the future? Like, because they're in a very interesting situation. They've got some great players. The guys that I know both of us love, like Jerry Jeudy. I believe we both like KJ Hamler. Bradley Chubb, really solid. Justin Simmons, very, very good. What do they do? What do they need? Like, is this a team? They have a decent offensive line. It's nothing terrible, nothing amazing. They have a good rookie in Javonte, rookie running back. Is it like, oh, they got to go quarterback in this draft, or did they tank and they try and build up?
There's no quarterbacks to take in this class. Oh, I need to go through and really watch the guys. But everything that I've heard is like, yeah, there's not really a guy here. And like, I've watched some of, like, what's the dude on Oklahoma that got benched?
Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, I didn't like him. He was obviously not. I don't think anyone thought he was going to be a first round pick. But I remember when he had hype a couple years ago, I was like, this guy's not that good. But there's other guys. We'll see how it kind of plays out. I know there's a dude from a small school. I need to really watch the
Liberty or something
quarterbacks,
like that. Yeah.
but I don't think that's their move. I think you know who they're going to go after.
I mean,
You
there's
know
a
who they're
lot
going
of
to go
guys they
after,
could go
right?
after. Well, it depends on the draft pick.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no, no, no.
unless you're thinking Aaron Rodgers.
I'm thinking Aaron Rodgers. Yes, they have a team where they have a lot of money. They have a lot of cap space next year.
That's true.
They're one of the few teams without like totally restructuring and changing everything around that could right now go in and say, Aaron, we want to bring you and Devontae over. They're one of the few teams that could do that. Their defense is really good. I don't know if they're going to keep Bryce Callahan. I don't know if they're going to keep all their guys in the secondary, but Pat Surtain, he's exactly what they wanted out of him. Bradley Chubb needs to stay healthy. Losing Vaughn, obviously I have to find a way to replace Vaughn. This is a good defensive class, though, so you start talking about that. You could load up on a bunch of picks and then try to go swing for the fences with Aaron Rodgers. I feel like that's what they have to do. That's what they've done good with the John Elway regime. And I know that John Elway he had the old, we promoted you, but we demoted you at the same time.
Yeah.
Like a title promotion, but he isn't half, I'll say, on the roster anymore. I want to say, is it George Patton?
It might be.
It's a dude from the Vikings. I know that.
But I don't know. You talk about Rodgers, and I understand it. Like, yeah, they have the money to bring it. Like Sutton, his contract's up at the end of the year. So if they were to get Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, how many years does Rodgers have left in him? Because I think he could very well play 2 more years. But I mean, he just married his Hollywood wife. He's a California guy. It's very clear he will not be playing in Green Bay next year.
Are you alluding that he's going to the 49ers?
I'm not alluding to that, but I'm just alluding, how much does he want to play? Like, I feel like it would have to be such a great spot. And I understand, I think he does want to play with Devontae Adams. I think that is a huge selling point. But there's also just a lot of concerns that I have. The coaching that they have. He has to get a coach that he really likes. And they would I'm very sure that they would, fire the coach as soon as possible. If Aaron Rodgers said, "No, give me a new coach. Bring me," I don't know who you would want. Bring me Jim Harbaugh. They would hire Jim Harbaugh no matter how bad Jim Harbaugh is. They're still hiring him if Aaron Rodgers wants it.
Well, then Vic goes straight to defensive coordinator. Look at that.
And it's just a concern that I have with him and just banking on that, just because if they don't win in the next 2 years, because you have to look at it like, even with Rodgers and Devontae Adams, with this Denver Broncos roster, is that beating the Bills? Like, it's still a tough matchup against the Bills.
So. Dude, their defense is...
Could they? Yeah. Yes, they could. They very well could. But it's a big concern for me, because Rodgers has so much chemistry with all those guys in Green Bay. Obviously, Aaron Jones, he's got the chemistry with. Obviously, Devontae, even like guys like MVS and stuff. When you're looking at, if Rodgers is throwing to like a Jerry Jeudy. Now, I love Jerry Jeudy, but Jerry Jeudy has a drop problem. It's been one of his issues. Great route runner, probably a top 5 route runner in the NFL. Devontae Adams even says so. But is he catching those passes that Rodgers throws? Like, I don't know. I just have a lot of concerns.
You know what's great about that, actually? Is that wasn't that Devontae Adams thing too? Like, wasn't that the exact same?
That was why some people wanted him to get cut, was the drop problem. Yes.
Like, people wanted him cut, right? Yes. It was like, cut. Oh god.
There were articles like in the Green Bay newspaper, like, cut this guy. Like, he shouldn't make the roster because he can't catch. And I don't know. It's just like, for me, I don't think that's the move. I don't think going after Rodgers is the move. Now, it would give them a chance to win. But in my opinion, I think that what they need to do is look at this draft class. And obviously, I don't think it's quarterback. I think that, I'm sorry, Broncos fans, but I think they're going to have to sit through another year of piss poor quarterback play. And in the next year, go after a guy. And I need them to get a rookie. I know John Elway and the history since John Elway's even just been in that building, drafting quarterback hasn't worked. But they got to get somebody that can draft a quarterback. And they got to find somebody that can scout a quarterback because they need one, and they need one to be somebody that they can build around because they've lost Vaughn. They need a franchise guy, and they don't have that.
This definitely marked the end of like that Broncos era.
Yes.
I really wonder what they're going to go, like what direction they're going to go. Like I said, their secondary is great. But what are they going to try to like mold this team around? I think that's the big question. I also think, like I said, they have a ton of money going into next year. We could see them like you're saying, like, oh, we don't know how good that roster is. Can it compete in the AFC? They could do some things where, oh, all of a sudden, like, yeah, they can compete. And we've definitely seen that with a lot of teams in the NFL lately. I think the biggest one is the Rams, who Von Miller was traded to. Like this year, they say, oh, can they compete with Jared Goff? They're kind of they had their peak, like the Rams had their peak a little bit, and then they go and they get Matthew Stafford, and they start adding all these different people. Cooper Kupp's emerged as one of the best receivers. They have the best two defensive players in the league, in my opinion. Now they add Vaughn, Leonard Floyd. They're so good now. I think that's kind of the mold that they might do is like, all right, well, if we go and if they were to get Rodgers, I think you're right though. I think they might have a couple years where they have to reset and stuff. But I think their defense and their secondary is good enough where they could try to make some moves to make that push. If they weren't as good as they are, at least what I think they are, I think that would definitely be the best option. But we'll see. Yeah, and we have a comment here. This year's quarterback class is bad. Yeah, that's what we're saying. Like that's why this year we don't think they're going to take the quarterback. It would be that next year. It'd be in the 2023 draft.
And for me, how often do we see teams try and make that push and ruin themselves? I think the best example, unfortunately, is the Seattle Seahawks in recent years, where they've looked at it and they're like, we need to contend. We need it. Jamal Adams, please, please, please. And this isn't me trying to just slander the Seahawks because I don't like the Seahawks, but it's like sometimes you need to take a step back and realize the best chance for this team to have continued success is for them to build up because they're not where the Jets are, right? They're not where the Jaguars are, where the Texans are, where when they draft a guy like the Jaguars just drafted with Trevor Lawrence, what like the Jets just drafted and I don't know, 4 years ago drafted with Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson, where they bring in a guy and they're like, here's our new franchise guy. And everybody's like, oh, we love this guy. And then they drop back to pass and they just get murdered and the defense allows 50 points a game and everything goes wrong for them. The Broncos don't have that. So if they just work on building up a decent core, a core that would win, this doesn't have to be a core that would get them not a core to get to the playoffs. You want to have a good draft pick.
Like this year. I mean,
exactly.
I think they're a little bit better.
Right, a little bit better right now. But, they have a lot of money. My advice to them would be don't spend it. Let Sutton walk. Like, it's okay to have money left over because when they find that franchise guy, maybe it's next year. Maybe they watch this draft class and they're like, you know what? There's this quarterback really slept on. He's a 4th rounder or something like that, where they look at it and they're like, hey, and the guy turns out to be Dak Prescott, where it's like, it's not a situation where they go, we're going to draft this guy to be our franchise that everybody hypes up. But they draft a guy and they're like, yeah, we'll test you out for a year. If it works out, you're great. But if it doesn't work out, we're going 1st round quarterback next year. And we are going to fully scout. And maybe we trade, pull the Cardinals. We drafted Josh Rosen. We realized he wasn't legit. Trade him, draft a new quarterback. And I know that terrifies a lot of Broncos fans because they just haven't been able to get the quarterback right. But that's what you have to do. If you want to be a franchise that wins Super Bowls, you have to be able to draft a quarterback. Because if you look at like any team that wins, like consistently wins, it's because they have that cornerstone guy. Even if they're not even winning Super Bowls. Like Seattle, I brought up Seattle, like they haven't won a lot of Super Bowls since it's been a while, but they always had Russ, right? And they're always competing because they had Russ.
Because I think there's one other factor in Seattle, though.
I mean,
They haven't hit on a
should do.
first-round pick since Earl Thomas. Like, they drafted Rashad Penny, bro. Like, I still don't understand that. A Mountain West running
And
back.
yet they're still relevant because they got the one thing right.
Yeah.
Like, Patrick Mahomes. They're always going to be competing in games because they got the quarterback right. Josh Allen's always going to be competing in games. Even his rookie year, like, they weren't winning, but they were in games. Like, that's the biggest thing for me is, like, you got to get the quarterback right, and they at least have the situation around them to where they can actually analyze if they got it right. Because the Jets, I'm sorry, you can't analyze if Zach Wilson's legit or not. You can't. Because he's running for his life every play. It's just like you couldn't analyze if Sam Darnold was legit. Because he was running every play.
That's why the Jets pick never made sense.
Exactly.
I mean, you know how I thought about it.
Oh, I thought
it's ridiculously dumb.
I mean, they should have absolutely gone with Penei Sewell.
No, they should have traded back.
Oh, that's also they should have done that. Too. They could have done a lot of things that wasn't.
Why would okay? We want to talk about the Jets a little bit because there is the whole Mike White thing. Now, I'm not gonna say Mike White's better or anything, but why don't you trade that pick away? What you like? Are we gonna ever find out?
Is that New York? Is that like the New York media and the New York fans? Like it had to be a pleaser because they wanted Sam Darnold out so badly. It felt like the city had lost faith in him. And honestly, if the city loses faith in your cornerstone guy, you can't keep going. Unfortunately. Like, do you think
I disagree.
there's any way?
I disagree.
Because there's no way that they would have been able to say, okay, Sam Darnold, you're going to prove them wrong. We still can't give you anything.
Okay, but that's the thing, though. Like, Sam's not a guy that gets bothered by that stuff at all.
No,
at least
it's not about him being bothered by it. It's not about Sam Darnold being bothered by it. It's just about the entire team and the culture around the team. Right? Because it's a negative motto. We saw what Jamal Adams was saying. He was like, get me out of here. I don't want to be here. What did Le'Veon Bell say? Get me out of here. I don't want to be here.
Marcus May, I thought he was going to get traded.
Yes.
I was hoping the Niners were going to pick him up. Marcus May's a stud.
And that's because it all stems from the franchise guy and the cornerstone guy, and Sam Darnold being that guy. It may not have affected him. I think he was fine with it. You know, he went to USC. Very, very polarizing fans. Very, very passionate fans. Like, he's used to that. But other guys, they hear that negative stuff, and it's all about Sam, and then all of a sudden it's about the whole team. I hate this Jets team. Get rid of everybody. And they hear that, and some guys can't take that. And so when the fans don't back you, because you know what I wasn't hearing last year at the very beginning of last season, very, very beginning before everybody realized he sucked? Get rid of everybody on Denver, right? Drew Lock's terrible. Because at the beginning of the year,
dude, you would have thought Drew Lock was...
We got Drew Lock. Like, this team is going places. You know, we've got great safeties. We got Vaughn. We got Bradley Chubb. Like, it's all in. But all of a sudden, they lost faith in Drew Lock. And it was, oh, no. Get rid of everybody.
Do you remember, like, we'd have conversations, and just so everyone knows, like, we have a lot of friends that are Broncos fans. Yes. So that's why we've talked about him quite a bit today, even though that's neither of our teams. But we were talking about it, and you would have thought that Drew Lock came out there and had a Justin Herbert level season. He threw over 200 yards one time. One time, they're like, give him the keys. He's a franchise guy. And then it was like 4 games in the next year, and they're like, all right, yeah, we were wrong on that one.
Yeah.
But you should have been able to see it. Like, I don't know. Not like, I understand getting excited. Like, anytime you have a young quarterback, you're going to get excited. But man, dude, the overhyped, like how hyped Drew Lock got was so funny to me.
Absolutely. And really quickly, my camera is defocusing. I'm going to leave and come back. It'll be totally fixed. You pick the topic and start talking about it. I will be back in a second.
Okay. So let's see here. What was the biggest game of the week? Let's talk about this Chiefs game. So one thing that I've seen a lot about is, the Chiefs, are they that team? McConnell, do you think they're that team? Do you think they're a good team? Do you think they're going to compete for a playoff spot? Do you think they're going to make the playoffs at this point? Before you answer, though, one other thing. They have no games remaining with teams that have losing records. Or maybe it's one.
Wow.
They basically have all 500 or above teams. And a lot of that is because their division is all 500 or above as well, which makes it a lot harder. The wild card spots in the AFC are super tight. It seems like almost every single team outside of like the Jets and the Dolphins and the Texans are competing. It honestly feels like that. I might be missing someone, but I don't know. Is that all of it? Is it every team? Oh, and the Jags. Like it's almost every single team in the AFC is competing. So do you think they're going to make the playoffs? Do you think they're good enough? Because I'm skeptical right now.
Are the Chiefs a good team? No. Can they be a good team with this roster? I think so. I think they have the potential to do that. When I look at this team and the way that they built it, I was talking about this last night. I mean, we've been texting about it, like what's up with the Chiefs? Here's my take on the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Patrick Mahomes comes in, and I got to say, I think Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. So Patrick Mahomes comes in, and they get all this success, and he's dominating his quote unquote rookie year, his first year starting. They don't win the Super Bowl. They don't make it to the Super Bowl, but the next year they get to the Super Bowl. They win it. They beat the Niners, a terrible team. Just kidding. But the next year they get to the Super Bowl. They play against the Buccaneers, all that stuff. Mahomes has gotten his massive contract, the $500 million, the $500 million man. And I think they got caught up in it. The pre Super Bowl game, against the 49ers, I think it was The Rock doing the intros, right? And he calls them the Legion of Zoom. It was really stupid. I thought it was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my entire life. But it's like they fell in love with this concept that everybody kept talking about. Patrick Mahomes can step back and he can throw it up to anybody. If anybody with speed gets behind you, Mahomes can get it there. And so they obviously have Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek Hill isn't a speedster. He's a good route runner. He's not a perfect route runner, but he's a good route runner. And then he's got great hands, and he's also fast.
Did you say he's not a speedster?
I said he's not like a pure speedster.
Like he's not just only a deep throw.
Yeah, that's what I mean by speedster. I
thought you're saying Tyreek Hill's not fast. I was like,
McConnell. He's slow. He's the slowest wide receiver I've ever seen. If Jarvis Landry had any speed, it would be the opposite of Tyreek Hill. No. Tyreek Hill is not just a deep threat. Like the dude can do it all. But they go out and they're like, oh, we got Tyreek Hill. Okay. Let's get Mecole Hardman. Let's get Pringle. Let's get these guys with no route running ability, poor hands, but they're fast. DeMarcus Robinson. And they're like, okay, we have all these guys. But you know who they used to have, Matt? Sammy Watkins. A guy with good speed, but he can run routes and he can catch. He has a bit of an injury problem, but when he's healthy, he's a good wide receiver. He's not amazing, but he's good, and he can do his job. And they go out there and they're like, okay, we're drafting. What do we need? Okay, we kind of need a running back. Well, let's get flashy, right? Let's not go with Jonathan Taylor, the surefire pound-it running back. Let's not go with the shifty DeAndre Swift, who most people had as the number one running back in the class, or the kind of very versatile J.K. Dobbins. They say, you know what? Let's get really tricky, and let's get really cute. Let's take the big risk on the LSU guy, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And they take Clyde. And I think that they got too cute. And you see it not only with the way they built their roster, but the way that they play. I don't know if you were watching the Giants game, but I saw one of the worst plays I've ever seen in my entire life.
You're talking about the one where they flipped it behind?
What? Like I watched that and I was like, they're getting too cute. It's unnecessary. I am a fan of using the motion. I think motioning is a great thing in the NFL. Helps you diagnose if it's man or zone coverage, helps you get the defense in a difficult position. A lot of great things that come from motioning. But sometimes it seems like they're motioning just to motion. Like they're just doing extra things because they don't need to. Mahomes is jump passing when he doesn't need to. I'm okay with jump passing. I'm not like, hey, don't ever do anything different. Do the sidearms, do the jump passes. Don't do the no look. That's stupid. That is like almost never necessary. But my big issue with it is they're getting too cute. And Mahomes is getting too cute. And he's going back to the Texas Tech Mahomes where he feels like he has to do everything. But they built the roster being too cute, and they were trying to figure out this new way to play. And it's just not enough. You got to have some route running.
I think there's another factor too.
What is
the
it?
Orlando Brown signing makes no sense for what they try to do at all.
The slowest offensive.
We talked about that. I mean, you've seen him the most out of a lot of people. You've watched him a lot more than Chiefs fans have because he was in Baltimore first. And remember, we were talking about, you're like, I don't, like, you were happy. You were like, yes, we got him. Like, we got the Chiefs to pay him. You were hyped.
Yeah, because so he was obviously playing in Baltimore. The Ravens had to scheme around Orlando Brown Jr., especially in the run game, because they couldn't get him to the next level. That was the issue. They always had to have a swing tackle coming over if they need somebody to get to the outside to allow Lamar to get outside, or JK or Gus Edwards. They always had to get yeah, he's good if you're standing still and you're a quarterback and you're in the pocket, he's decent. If you're Lamar Jackson, if you're Patrick Mahomes, if you're Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, and you step out of that pocket, he's not blocking anymore. If they're containing, he's not blocking. Like, you can just get around him. And that's his main issue is, like, he's like a wall. But you can go around this wall, okay? Like, that's the main issue with him. So.
And I think we were talking about it the other day too. They've been containing Mahomes a lot better.
Yeah.
And they don't have a great line. Because he can't
hold the edge rusher to the spot, and they just shift around him, and he tries to stay with them, but he can't. There's a reason why Lamar Jackson's scrambles are very rarely him breaking the pocket. It's Lamar Jackson backs up, right up the middle. Those are all of his biggest runs, are all up the middle runs, because Orlando Brown couldn't hold the contain. And that's why I was very happy.
I feel like last night's game against the Giants, and like, yes, they won, but it kind of shows where the Chiefs are at. Like, you're going to beat the Giants by 3. They didn't even have Saquon. Like, we know how much different they look when they have Saquon. They look so much better. At least I feel like that.
And Booker looked like he was Saquon.
Booker looked pretty good. I don't know, man. It's rough. Their defense is also Swiss cheese. Their defense is terrible. Now, luckily, Chris Jones is an absolute monster. So every once in a while, he'll just make an insane play, and I'll be like, all right, they're okay. Chris Jones is there to save the day, but
he's not in his spot anymore.
Huh?
He's playing edge rusher. What is he doing?
He played inside a lot last night.
Yeah, last night he did. But
he's also been hurt. Yeah. And, like, when he's hurt, they have been toast. I mean, but that's why they've been losing, is because it doesn't seem like. Also, I like that you brought up how they just have like all these fast receivers that, not trying to be a dick, but they suck. Like, Hardman isn't good. Pringle's not good. I like to make like jokes about Pringle because he literally just came out of like nowhere. I'd never heard of him before, and then he started making catches like last year. But he's not very good. They just aren't good. Jet McKinnon is one of their running backs. Darrell Williams. Thank you, Darrell Williams. You got me a fantasy win last week, but I mean, he's not very good if we're being honest. Clyde, for spitting a first-round pick on Clyde, talk about a whiff. That's a big whiff. But at the end of the day, of course they have a chance. They have Patrick Mahomes. He's able to really like pull some games just out like off them. I mean, he's still doing that now. I feel like, I don't know if last night was exactly that, but I feel like they just kind of scooted on by. I don't know if they make the playoffs this year, though. The AFC's that good. I think
it's tough.
If the Chargers win the division, then you have potentially 3 teams from the AFC North, potentially 4 teams from the AFC North. The Patriots are in the mix. The Titans and the Colts. The Colts would have to come up a lot, so I don't even know if I'll include them. But it's going to be tough. And they're going to be able to get like a 6 or a 7. And we talked about it before. Like, if they get to the playoffs, like, yeah, like they can just try to outscore everyone. I mean, that's what they do now. But usually, not last night, but usually like it's about like, all right, like let's just put up like 45 and hope that this team doesn't put up more. But it's not sustainable. You've already seen Mahomes get jacked up a couple times. I don't know. I think the worst thing they did though was just with the offensive line and the Orlando Brown signing. To me, it doesn't make any sense from a scheme standpoint. Also the Clyde pick. He was like a third. He was like pretty.
I want to talk about the Clyde pick.
Yeah.
Because I talked about this with Mike last night, and we will have to get Mike on the show at some point. But so the biggest thing that I talked with him about was he has this theory, and I completely agree with the theory, where basically when you have these great college football teams, that LSU team was great. It was an all-time great team. It seems like a lot of guys get picked off that team that shouldn't be, that aren't really that good. But because they got to play with so many great players and they were on such a historic team, they get overdrafted. Because if you looked at what that team did, it was pass the football. And you look at the guys that were involved in the passing game from that team, how are they doing in the NFL? Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Terrace Marshall. They're all doing pretty darn good. But then you look at the other guys on that team that weren't part of, like, yeah, they had a good defense, but let's talk about the other guys. Grant Delpit, taken just out of the first round. Patrick Queen, first round. Kaylavon Chason, first round. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, first round. It's like they were dragged in, and it happens with Alabama all the time because Alabama's great. We're like, oh yeah, they play for Alabama.
But Bama's even different because Bama's like this guy.
No, it's only like the historic Bama teams.
Yeah. But I mean, like this, like for Bama, it's like this guy, 5-star coming out of college or out of high school. He's the best player ever to come out of Idaho. You know, it'll be like some random state, and it'll be like, he's the greatest player of all time. It's like he underperformed, but like you still see the talent. It like to me, especially for a position like running back, like you're saying, a lot of times. And it's hard to find running backs that aren't products of their environment. I mean, every player is at any position to an extent. Yeah. But who's the guy? I always think about this, like especially when you have like a great offense like that. Who are the guys that make it tick? It wasn't Clyde. No one thought, man, if they didn't have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they would really struggled on offense. No, it was about Burrow, it was about Jamar, and it was about Chase. I don't even think it was that much about Terrace Marshall. I think he really came on the scene a little bit after, but it was those three guys. It was those three guys that were so great. And Jefferson kind of got overshadowed, but he was still great. If you go back and watch his LSU games, Jefferson's still making insane plays all the time.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think that's a huge factor. I don't know how that happens though. I don't know. To me, when I was watching those guys, I was like, I don't really think that Clyde's on the level of these other dudes.
That was the biggest thing, was Andy Reid got caught up in the Brian Westbrook. Why is Brian Westbrook your target player? I'm not against Brian Westbrook. I think he was a good running back. He did his job for Andy Reid. But when you have a Jonathan Taylor where you can be like, okay, who could Jonathan Taylor become? And he runs like Adrian Peterson. That's the type of play. Now, the chances of him becoming Adrian Peterson. The best comparison for him was Ezekiel Elliott. Coming out of Wisconsin, was just pound the rock, 2,000 yards pretty much every year, just absolutely carried that team. Why would you not want Ezekiel Elliott? Because you see what Ezekiel Elliott, you see what Saquon Barkley, you see what these Big Ten guys do when they come into the NFL. They know how to run the football because that's what they do. LSU wasn't a running team, and I understand that the Chiefs aren't a running team. And so they were like, oh, we really want this guy that can just get into space. Why didn't they go after Swift? That was Swift's thing, was he can get in space and he's nasty. I think that was crazy. I mean, they just reached, and I don't know. I don't understand why teams reach like that. Obviously sometimes it works out, and it's way easier to point out the bad ones over the good ones.
Yeah, and hindsight's always 20/20. Yeah, but at the time, both of us, we were still,
I mean, everybody was shocked when they took. I was thinking they could. I was like, maybe they go running back here. That could be smart.
But you didn't think Clyde.
And I was like, I scouted J.K., Jonathan Taylor, and DeAndre Swift. I didn't even scout Clyde because he wasn't in. I was like, Yeah,
Well, because you thought the Ravens were going to go running back.
I was like, Ravens, if they could go second round running back, I would love that. And I wanted them to get JK. I had him as my number one running back. But, which, look at that. Turned out pretty good. I had JK, then Jonathan Taylor, then DeAndre Swift. I think I did solid in my rankings. But when you watch that and you're like, okay, this guy was like a third round grade. And they were coming off that was after the Super Bowl, right? I want to say, yeah. Coming off winning the Super Bowl, and your weakness was very clearly defense. Why are they not going defense? And they just fell in love with this offensive thing, and I don't know. It's wild to me that happened. I just wasn't expecting it at all.
Yeah. All right, you want to talk about the Saints a little bit? I know you might have some things to say on the Saints.
Jameis, man. It's terrible. It's a travesty what happened to him. One of the best to ever do it. King Crableg himself.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, McConnell's like the biggest Jameis stan ever. And we were really high. We've been really high on the Saints. I personally I saw a lot of people ripping Jameis earlier this year. Dude, his receivers they're not good. Like Callaway's all right.
Does he have the worst? Did they have the worst receivers in the NFL? Like it's up there. Like, and that's sad that like the Jets aren't that good.
But they have Corey Davis.
Exactly.
And they have Jamison Crowder.
Exactly. Like when you think about oh wow, they really don't have weapons. They got way more weapons than Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith.
Dude, Traquan Smith hasn't even been playing either. That 2 games ago was his first game back. He was on IR as well.
And he was terrible when he came back.
But last week he was all right.
He was
Yeah, I don't think he's like some super dynamic player or anything. But it was Deontay Harris and Marquez Callaway. And who is their other wideout?
I mean, Alvin Kamara, I guess, is the other wideout. But like that bad situation for him. But could they still make the playoffs with I believe Taysom is supposed to come back this week or next week. Is the expectation.
I don't know if it's this week. I think it might be Seaman this week. We'll see. Or Simeon. Trevor Simeon. Sorry, my mistake. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's huge. I think it hurts them so bad. I think for their offense, when MT's coming back and you have MT and Kamara, I thought Jameis has looked a lot better. And people are like, oh, Jameis doesn't push the ball down the field. That's because Jameis used to always push the ball down the field. And Sean Payton and Drew Brees said, hey, Jameis, you got to cool a little bit. If they're not open, you can't just start throwing it up. Especially with this team, you don't have Mike Evans on this team. Jameis recognized that and willed them to what? They have they're 5-2 right now. He put them in a very good spot on Sunday as well to beat the Bucs. So I'm going to give him some credit there.
Did he do enough to get re-signed?
I don't know if it's by the Saints, but if I'm a team that doesn't have a quarterback that thinks that they want to, I don't know. It really hurts Jameis. It's like such a big blow to his career because it's not like he went out, like I said, like he's not like he went out there and was like, everyone was like, wow, look at Jameis. He's a completely different player. But I think that maybe he might only have one more chance. He might have one more chance.
Like that's the question I have with Jameis. It's like I don't care about the Saints. They lost Jameis. I'm not rooting for him anymore. All right.
Yeah, I also thought that too. Like I never root for the Saints, but I was rooting for the Saints a lot when they had Jameis. Yeah. I always root for Jameis. I don't know what it is, but
he would have led them to the playoffs. I fully expect them to have made the playoffs. I don't. They could. They have a really solid defense. Like they could make the playoffs, but I don't think they will.
No, Wilson's coming back this week. The Niners they just won. They have a light schedule. McCaffrey's coming back. Like there's a lot of teams that are getting better.
And so, like if he had made the playoffs, then teams are looking at him, right? Denver next year's looking at him. The Packers are looking at him to battle with what's his face, the backup that they should have drafted. Yeah, Jordan Love. But there's some teams that are looking at him like, hey, you know what? We kind of need a quarterback. Hey, maybe Minnesota's looking at him because maybe they want to move on for Kirk Cousins. I know they have Kellen Mond, but maybe they don't really believe in Kellen Mond. So
that's like a 3-year project.
Yeah. So it's like now that though it's, oh, you played 6.5 weeks. We didn't really get to see you try the ball with any good receivers. It was just check downs to some guys. Now, we did make some good throws. In the preseason, he made some dimes to Marquez Callaway. I mean, he made some great throws, but that's preseason because they're like, James, let it rip. Like, this doesn't matter. And he made a lot of great throws, especially not this last week, but 2 weeks ago. He made some throws where I was like, oh my goodness. And then it's just bouncing off of hands. And I'm like, these are touchdowns that you're throwing against Seattle. I believe it was against Seattle. It might not have been, but it was tough. And overall, when you have a guy like that, I feel like that's enough to where teams look at that and say, hey, we should give you a chance. I think he'll be in the league. Maybe he's fighting for a roster spot. But like of the guys that you would bring in for the Jameis, because Jameis, I would assume, gets a 1-year deal next year again. The guys he's competing with are guys like Teddy Bridgewater. Drew Lock, I would assume, gets cut at the end of this year or traded. Like Sam Darnold, I guess you could bring in. Like I feel like Jameis has shown enough to be there. It's not like people are going to look at this season and be like, Jameis can't do it.
Well, okay, just real quick, his touchdown interception ratio. And granted, there are 2 games where one he had 5 touchdowns, one he had 4 touchdowns. But it's 14-3. That's incredibly efficient. And yes, he's with Sean Payton, but I also think that if you just watch the games, like you turn on the film, you watch the games, you're going to see like he looks a lot better in terms of his decision making now. And I feel like that was the biggest thing. It was never like, does Jameis have the arm talent to do that? No, like he's not. And I think one of the things that does kind of hurt him a little bit is the league hadn't really started to, like when he came out, it wasn't as big on like, oh, you got to have a guy that can extend the play, that can, make the magic happen, I guess, right? He's not exactly like the best play extender. He is more of a conventional quarterback. Doesn't mean he can't do it or is incapable of like getting outside and like making a throw or, extending a play. Like we do see him do that for sure. But he's not quite on like that level of like some of the guys that have been drafted lately, like the way that the league is shifting to, it feels like. I don't know. I think he should get another spot, another starting opportunity.
Yeah.
However, I think you're right. I think it could very likely be like him versus Darnold or him versus Teddy or whatever battle like that. And the reason why I don't love that, if it's not with the Saints, it could also be with the Saints again. You never know.
Yeah.
If it's not with the Saints, I just worry that he's going to be put in a spot like with the Saints' bad wideouts this year where he doesn't have a great chance to succeed, and it's just kind of it for Jameis. But then the thing about him
Washington?
I like that a lot. I
hadn't even thought about them. They need a quarterback.
I think that could be a good spot for him, actually. They need – well, I have Curtis Samuel too. Curtis has just been hurt all year.
Yeah.
They have 2 good Terry.
They've got Gibson who can catch out of the backfield.
That could be a good spot.
I think that's my dream scenario. I've already got the Washington football team merch. So
really?
Yeah, I've got a hat, I've got a sweatshirt. I've got 2 hats actually. Yeah, the football team. See that? I rep the football team.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Is that it for today?
I think so. And for anybody kind of in the stream late, if you guys didn't know, we're going to be streaming Tuesdays and Thursdays, but we'll cut it all up. It's going to be podcast style. So I'm sorry that we don't interact with the comments. The goal of this isn't to like get massive streams or anything like that. Now, if you guys happen to come and enjoy the live show, that's great. It'll always be up if you guys want to watch that type of stuff. But the goal of this is just for us to hop in front of the mic and we're just talking, and we're recording this for our podcast. We'll be posting that out. We'll send out all the links on our channel. We'll put that in the bio and everything like that in the description, but we'll also post all the shorter clips. So if you ever want to come back and you're like, hey, what did they talk about this week? There will be clips ranging from, they could be even as short as 2-minute clips to 10-minute to, if we talk about one thing for a long time, it may be a full 20-minute clip. And then we also post a smaller clip from that segment that may be like 5 minutes or something like that. A lot of different things. We'll just be putting out different content to to really just talk about, show that like we talk about everything. Like we like to talk about a lot of things. We didn't talk about the Niners. We didn't talk about the Ravens. Like we talked about the Broncos, the Chiefs, and we talked about the Saints. Like that's what we like to talk about. We like to talk about everything. We have a good time doing it. So, you know, to anybody watching this, thank you everybody for watching or listening on the podcast platform. We're excited to be back. I think I'm going to say this right now. I had so much more fun doing this. This was a ton of fun to just get out and just talk about, you know, whatever we wanted to talk about. And so, you know, thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see all of you again next time on Thursday.
Peace.